We're back out at the big lake once again, and today, well, we're talking all about these guys. That's right, we're doing a deep dive into summer jerkbait fishing and why these might just be my absolute favorite summertime baits. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. I knew that felt weird. The little handle thing came loose. Oh, there we go, I got him. That feels pretty okay. That feels pretty okay. Did I foul hook him? Oh, that one's actually pretty good. Oh, that's a good one. And he's got a buddy with him. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and here we are in the middle of August, the hottest month of the year. The time when many anglers will tell you is the hardest time to catch a bass, or pretty much any type of fish. As that water gets hot, that bite just dies right off, and you can't buy a bite. It's times like that when I've got one of these tied on, a jerkbait. You know, if I've got to get a bite, whether it's a dink or whether it's a giant, I'm going to tie on a jerkbait. I've learned over the past couple of years, thank you very much, Mr. Steve Rogers, that having a jerkbait tied on all year long, it can be very beneficial. And I'm at the point now where I've caught more fish on this thing during the summertime than I ever was catching during the winter. It is so effective during the summer. And the reason for that is that erratic action imitates an injured, dying bait fish so well. You know, whether it's a threadfin shad like we have out here, or a shiner, or a bluegill, or a minnow, or a goby, or an alewife, or whatever it is you have on your personal fishery, you know, just change out the color, there you go. When a bass is busting up on shad or bait fish or whatever, that fish will start to twitch and fling around as it dies. You know, that makes it an easy meal. That's what makes this so enticing. That's what makes this so effective all year long. Now, there's a different way that I fish it during the summertime than how I'm fishing it during the winter. There's some different types of retrieves that I'm doing. And today, you're going to find a very surprising way that I fished it, a brand new way that I started to fish it that surprised even me. I didn't know if it was going to work. I didn't know if it was going to end in disaster. But to my surprise, it worked out beautifully. And it's something you can bet I will continue to do. And I will continue to make videos about. But still, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started. We're going to talk about the different types of retrieves I'm doing. We're going to talk about the gear that I use. And we're going to talk about the places on the water that I'm targeting. So let's head out into the little boat and let's go ahead and get started, and we'll talk about the different types of retrieves. Okay, well, here are the retrieves that I like to do with a jerkbait. And you've got your typical normal regular jerkbait retrieve, right? You wind it down and you pop it a couple times and you let it sit. And then you three times and you let it sit. One time and you let it sit. And the only thing I'm doing is popping that slack out. As soon as I feel tension on the rod, I'm stopping. You know, I'm not trying to rip it all the way back. I'm just trying to pop that slack out. That's all I'm trying to do. And then you let it sit for a few seconds. This is your, your typical standard jerkbait retrieve. This is the one that everybody is taught. It's very, very effective, In the wintertime especially, this is the normal jerkbait retrieve that you're going to be doing in the wintertime or in the fall, whenever that water's colder. But my summertime retrieve is similar to that, but I go a lot faster. I'm not putting any pauses in it. I'm just doing rip, crank, rip, crank. Again, just trying to pop the slack out of that line. That's all I'm really trying to do. I'm not really trying to rip that bait as much as I'm just trying to pop the slack out of the line. I'm just not, I don't have any pauses, and I can work it faster, right? Or I can work it slower. But the key is I'm working it with no pauses. Cast it out there, wind it down, and crank, crank, crank. So you know, and that's my typical summer jerkbait retrieve, is I'm working it much, much more quickly. So that's the main difference between that and what you're going to be doing when the water's cold. And you can see under the water there, if you can see it, it's kind of like walking the dog. It's kind of like, you know, fishing a topwater spook. And another type of retrieve you can do is you can kind of mix them up. You can kind of work really fast and then put some pauses in there. And then, you know, work really fast and put some pauses in there. So you can change it up to suit the environment that you're fishing. You know, you'll find out. Those fish will tell you what type of mood they are in, what type of retrieve that they want you to do. You know, they'll let you know pretty quickly. Like I said, just cast it out there, crank it down to the depth we want, and then let it sit for a couple seconds, and we can work it fast, and then we can let it sit for a couple of seconds. You know? And these are the types of retrieves that I've been having the most amount of success with. But the key to everything is making sure you have slack in that line. Otherwise, if your line is taut, if you don't have a lot of slack in it, it's really going to impact how that bait behaves in the water. It's really going to affect that action, and not in a good way either. You know, it'll go from a zipping side to side action to basically just being a stick. And that's not really what you want. I mean, I'm sure you could probably catch fish like that, but I haven't. So as you can see, it's quite a bit different than your standard jerkbait retrieve that you would use in the wintertime. What I like to do is I like to keep that bait moving. I want to keep that bait as active as I can. Yes, I'm throwing in some starts and stops, but I still want to do so with urgency. Seems like an oxymoron, I know, but it's a stop, a pause with urgency. I feel like I'm getting better bites. I feel like I'm getting more attention. And I feel like those bass are just generally more interested in my bait when I work it like that. It's the method that I've developed that I use to get more bites out on the water. Now, as far as different places that I'm looking to fish it, well, you know, I'm basically looking to fish it in the same places that I was fishing square bills and crankbaits. I'm looking to fish it right on the edge of weed lines. You know, you've got places where that grass kind of just fades out. In our lake, because it's so shallow out here, and because it's such a gradual decline in depth, it's not really a hard weed edge so much as a gradient, right? You go from sparse to really dense as you move into that water, as you move more north. And that's kind of how I work it, is I go from where it's really sparse and I let the current take me to where it's getting more and more dense. It's basically the same places I'm working the square bill, working the crankbaits, you know, working spinner baits and chatter baits. And that's what's been so effective for me, because I know that's where the fish are. I'm working those areas because I know that's where the fish are. And I'm seeing signs of life. You know, as I'm bringing my bait along, I can adjust it, because a lot of times I'm getting follows. And it doesn't take long. I'll get a couple follows. I'll see a couple of 1.5, 2 pound bass follow it in, you know, or sometimes little bitty dinks will be following it in. But that lets me know that I am getting some interest from those fish. So maybe just a couple tweaks here and there, maybe a different jerkbait, maybe just a little bit less work or more work on the retrieve, but I can hammer it out now that I know that the bass are out there and I've got their attention. Now today, I did something that was probably borderline insane. It's something I've never even tried before, not even remotely. I fished that jerkbait in a place and in a way I never even thought about doing before. That is, I went far north, and if you've been a viewer of this channel, if you've watched the channel for a while, you know that on the big lake, going north means going really shallow, really skinny, and that's where the hydrilla is the thickest. So I'm going to fish a jerkbait, an open troubled bait in a hydrilla mat. You know, this is the place where I'm usually pitching a jig, or I'm punching mats, or I'm throwing a Texas rigged worm. This is not a place that I have a jerkbait, but the idea struck me that, well, maybe I can try to work it around. Maybe I can try to fit it into some pockets. Maybe I can try to do something with it. And, worst case scenario, I get it hung in some hydrilla and I could either pull it free or I can, you know, pull the boat over there and reach in there and pull it out. I figured I'd have to, just pull it out of the gunk. Now today I didn't have my normal jerkbait setup. What I normally use for a jerkbait is a 7-foot medium or 7-foot medium light, something that's got a little bit softer tip, something that's got a little bit more bend. And I'm using that with a spinning combo that's got 10-pound braid to 8 to 10-pound fluorocarbon leader that's usually about 10 to 12 feet long. And I like that because it gives me a little bit more feel. I can work that bait with a little bit more feel and a little bit more finesse, which is how I like to do it. Now, if you work a bait cast with a jerkbait, then that's fine. Use what works for you. But usually a finesse combo is what works for me. But today, I didn't have that. I had my swim bait combo, and it's spooled with 12-pound fluorocarbon on a 7-foot medium heavy. Okay, it's still got a little bit softer tip because, I like that in a swim bait rod. But still, as it turned out, it was actually a really good thing that I had that. Well, as you're about to see, maybe fishing in that hydrilla mat with a jerkbait wasn't such a crazy idea after all. We are really far north. We are in really shallow water, and I'm going to try this jerkbait. I know this is probably a really bad idea, but I want to try it anyway. But this, you see, this is what I'm fishing. You see all that? Can you see that? That's what I'm fishing in. This is what my genius self decided would be a good idea today. And I'm having to angle my rod to try to keep the bait in between the hydrilla, which is getting harder and harder as more north we get. And I'm really trying to stay just above that hydrilla, and I'm actually doing it better than I thought I would. There, I got him. Ooh, that's probably, is that gunk? No, that feels like it's gunk. Feels like it's trying to rip itself free. I think I might have gunk. No, I got a fish. I got him. I'll be. Well, I will be. I'll be darned. In the biggest slop in the lake, in the middle of all the slop of the lake, I caught this guy. Can you believe that? Taking risks paid off, including fishing this thing in places I didn't even think you should probably be fishing it. Now, I don't know if anybody else has done that. If anybody else has fished this, I mean, I honestly thought it was a clump of gunk. There we go. Thank you so much for playing. I really do appreciate that. Like I said, this is the first time my crazy mixed up brain has ever thought of working a jerkbait this far north. This is usually not a place you would work. And got him. Oh, nope, it was grass. Or was it? Feels like something is pulling and not pulling. That had to have been, yeah, okay. I did catch a piece of hydrilla. Alright. Oops, but this is, yeah, you can see that this is not a place you would normally fish exposed trebles. Not some place you would willingly fish exposed trebles. But I can pretty much stay above that hydrilla. I got him. That's another one. That's another one. That's another one. That's another nice one. All right. That's a good little fish. We are very, very happy to have him. All right. Thank you, buddy. Have a good one. Now, who would have thought using a jerkbait in a big hydrilla mat would have been so successful? Acres of hydrilla everywhere in shallow water, and that jerkbait shined. It was a great bait. I was happy that I actually had my swim bait rod with me because I was able to pull those fish out of that muck, out of that slop. If I'd have had my finesse spinners, I could have done it, but it would have been a lot harder. So I actually had the right setup for the job today. And, you know, while that's not originally why I went up there, it was part of my thinking. It's like, well, I've got this. I can probably be okay if something goes wrong. But it's definitely something I'm going to work with again. So, you know, don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to try something new. You guys know that I Frankenstein things all the time. You guys know that I try to think outside the box. And I encourage you to do the same thing. And please, if you do something like that, feel free to share it with us. We really want to know. So as you can see, in the summertime, a jerkbait really can be one of the best fish catching tools that we have. When that bite dies off, I'm telling you, tie a jerkbait on and you will not be sorry. So there you have it. The jerkbait, one of the best summer lures I can think of, if not the best. Whenever times get tough, I always tie one on and I can always seem to get that skunk out of the boat sooner rather than later. It's something that I'm going to continue to be throwing, and it's something that I'm going to continue to be experimenting with. And I suggest you do the same thing. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.